Hello YouTube. In my continuous quest to bring you information about UFOs and USOs pertaining to the former Russian Empire, Soviet Union, modern Russian Federation, I want to show you most interesting depictions of observed UFOs and of course encounters. So today I will direct your attention to the observations of UFOs with tails. And I'll present a few cases from the archives of the Anomalia magazine, going back to the year 1991. The issue number 1, this is when the Soviet Union was still intact. And I find it quite interesting. I don't have a lot of illustrations, of course, but what there is I'll put in at least so you can have some background information. Here is the first report sent to the magazine, and it goes like this. I work as a train engineer's assistant. I drive freight trains. I still did not believe in any UFOs, but today, November 22nd, 1989, at night, I became convinced that all this was not a fairy tale. We were driving a train from Minvod, and at exactly 1 o'clock in the morning, we stopped at the red entrance of the Chervenaya station. I turned on the light in the cabin of the electric locomotive. I'm writing the arrival on the route itinerary, and I have such an unpleasant feeling that someone is looking at me very intently through the windshield. I raised my head and something was flying. At first I did not understand. I shouted to the engineer. They opened the windows. They thought to turn out the lights. A whole squadron was flying across the way from the south. The large object was surrounded by some kind of white halo. The head part glows and there are some stripes with bright dots in the middle all over the body. It was followed by a long plume of the same light substance, just like plasma. 3 oval objects were flying nearby at a short distance, also white like fluorescent lamps, and also surrounded by a white halo with a long train. They flew at the same low speed towards northern Kazakhstan. We watched all this for at least 5 minutes. Then a bright aurora with clearly defined borders appeared in the sky in the northeast where they flew. Crimson sparks were also visible in sight. After a couple of minutes, everything disappeared. And yet, it was a moonlit night. There wasn't a cloud in the sky, and they flew absolutely silently. This report was in a letter that came to the magazine from the Checheno-Ingush Autonomous Soviet Socialist Republic. The author was first initial A, last name Petrov, city of Gundermes. Next report. On August 3rd, 1990, at 25 hours 45 minutes, we were walking down the street and one of us happened to notice the sky. Look, what's flying? A luminous object flew across the sky at an altitude of no more than 2 kilometers, leaving a trail in the form of cone-shaped, diverging light bands. The object changed its speed, and at that moment the rays changed their configuration in the form of a sphere, and then began to diverge into a cone again. At the moment of departure, the object turned out to be our tail, meaning the one observed earlier, and the rays spread out in a fan in all directions. Then the object, which appeared to be a glowing speck, disappeared behind the trees. It moved from west to east, leaving a wavy trail stretching from the horizon to about the middle of the celestial sphere. The trail spread out like a fan and disappeared completely in 10-15 minutes. Signed N. Penkov, S. Nikitin, G. Chashnikov, Belaya Khalunitsa, town in the Kirov region. Next one. On August 5th, 1990, in the village of Zhelezovo, in the Tver region, my 15-year-old son and 3 other teenagers noticed around midnight a small bright white ball in the northwest at an altitude of about 1 kilometer above the forest. The distance to it was about 5 kilometers. The object was moving eastward at the speed of an airplane, but its size seemed to be clearly larger than any airliner. There was a light, wavy trail behind the object. A minute later, bright rays became visible, moving away from the cone in a parabola. Soon, a bright bluish tail formed behind the cone, which, swelling in size, took the shape of an airship 10 times larger than the full moon. The moon itself was visible in a southerly direction at that time. Then a ring separated from the core, less bright than the core, but brighter than the trace, and fitting into the contour outline of the airship, passed from the beginning to the tail and disappeared. After 5 minutes, already north of the village, the object stopped, began to descend sharply in a steep arc, hovered over the forest at an altitude of about 20 meters, and slowly began to fade out until it completely disappeared. At the moment of the object's sharp descent, the tail, in the form of an airship, broke away from it, slowly began to blur and fade. There was only a luminous, winding tail in the sky, which gradually turned into a smeared strip. Signed, E. P. Akimov, Tolyatti. Anomalia was an information and analytical bulletin of the ecology of the unknown association, translated from Russian. The Anomalia bulletin began to be published jointly with Itartas by the efforts of the joint editorial board, headed by the famous journalist and writer Sergei Fedorovich Bulantsov. The first issue was published in 1990. Since 1991, that bulletin, I refer to it as a journal, but I guess that's the right description. It was published regular until 1998, having a circulation of up to 15,000 copies. Anomalia became the very first, and it's in its own way, that's how they describe themselves, the only popular scientific publication in Russia devoted to anomalous phenomena and zones, unusual scientific approaches, etc. I think by 1999 they had 37 issues that were published. By 2001, the total number had reached 68. Whatever is in existence today is not what it was in 1991, but I'll leave it at that. That's what I wanted to let you know today, and of course I'm grateful that so many years ago, decades ago, Anomalia magazine, like other entities in the then Soviet Union, were keen on preserving UFO information from the Soviet Union and collected stories which became possible because of Gorbachev's policies, really, and the perestroika and the chains that were taken off the subject of UFOs in 1989. The censorship was removed. I will bring you more stories about ufology in the USSR, and of course you can look at my books too. If you like my research and you can support my research, you can do so through the links you will find in the description to this video. Please subscribe to my channel. Please like my videos. Please make sure you're notified when the new ones are published. Thank you.